The following is a conversation with Griffin William Sherry. Griffin is the former frontman of the band The Ghost of Paul Revere and recently put out a solo album entitled 100 Mile Wilderness. In this conversation, we talk about what it means to be a solo artist now and the inspiration to his album, among other things. I hope you enjoy the conversation I had with Griffin William Sherry. Yeah, so it is an absolute pleasure to have Griffin William Sherry on the podcast, man. How have things been for you? Good?
Great, man. It's great to be here. Things have been really good, rolling out the new record and just trying to stay on top of all the work that I got to do for it.
Yeah, I hear you. So I think like my favorite place to start with artists is kind of walk me through the music being played in your household as a kid, and maybe how did it influence you to like what you make now, or did you kind of find this style on your own?
As years go by, I find that it had more an impact on me than I really gave it credit for when I was growing up, I think. My dad was really big into James Taylor and Joni Mitchell and kind of brought the folk side of it. My mom was a big fan of the Doors and Hendrix and Bonnie Raitt. So like that was kind of in the house all the time. And the first two kind of records, first three records I really latched onto was that first Elvis Presley record, and then Magical Mystery Tour, and then funny enough, Songs in the Key of Springfield, the Simpsons, the Simpsons soundtrack one that's got all the Simpsons songs on it, which is like kind of a masterclass in songwriting on subject, which is really wild, but it's I love those songs. So yeah, that's what I started as a little kid, and that kind of grew. And I went off and found like harder rock and heavy metal and progressive rock on my own as a teenager, and that kind of influenced me. But bluegrass and country, and Bob Dylan was like I was like 18 or 19 when I finally kind of got that bug and really dove into that.
Yeah, I think for me too, like it's funny how you kind of mentioned. I think everybody goes through this like progressive rock metals phase as like a teen, right? Like you're rebellious, so
hmm
you got to go through it. Like I grew up on country that my teenage years was like huge into Metallica and like, bands in
Oh yeah.
that key, Rise Against, early Rise
hmm
Against and stuff like that. Yeah, then you kind of come back to like I've circled back now to country, folk, Americana. It's just kind of funny how that works.
Yeah.
Um,
Was it like Garth Brooks country, like that like late '90s, yeah, country
yes, yeah,
stuff? Yeah, yeah,
late
hell
late
yeah.
'90s country. I mean, Garth Brooks, Tim McGraw, Kenny Chesney. That's all my parents played, so that's all I really listened to until I had the opportunity to find my own stuff.
Hell yeah.
So now, after you've kind of stopped touring or making music with the Ghost of Paul Revere, do you take a break from music altogether, or is this solo project something you had kind of always envisioned?
I'd kind of always envisioned it. I started working on some of these songs even before The Ghost was done. I kind of knew that before we had recorded Goodbye, a lot of my songs on Goodbye are the last Ghost of Paul Revere record. They were meant for a solo record that I was already working on. It was going to be called Letters from the War of Love and Loss, and that was kind of I wrote that song because I had come up with that album title. And we decided we wanted to make another record, so a lot of those songs kind of got subsumed into The Ghost. But I kind of always wanted to make a solo record, and when we decided that we were going to put a pause and stop The Ghost, I kind of just jumped right in and started writing tunes and started working on the next phase of things.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how has that transition been for you from, working with a band to kind of, just really being able to do what you want to do and kind of make music the way you want to make it?
It's been interesting. It's not too different. A lot of times, especially with Ghosts, like if whoever was singing lead kind of was the one who wrote most of the stuff on the song and arranged it for everybody. So we would come in with pretty complete ideas to the studio. So that kind of writing process I'm pretty comfortable with, is of just like trying to do it all myself and then adding pieces later. And I knew Chuck, who drums for the Ghost or drummed for the Ghost. He wanted to stay on with whatever I was doing next. So it was nice to have one person with me that I had been touring with for years and stuff, and everybody else who's joined the band so far are all good friends. And so the touring band is like a kind of a group of Maine musicians that I've been good friends with for a long time. But it's the nice thing about it is, when you're not having to juggle three or four people's schedules, you can kind of take advantage of opportunities. That's certainly the new record came out of one of those. I got just like Eddie gave me a call and just was like, "Can you be in Nashville in a month to record?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I'll clear my schedule. I'll book a flight and I'll get down there. We'll figure it out." So those kind of opportunities are a lot easier to do now, and that it's a solo project. And it's nice to kind of have, just my hands on the steering wheel for the first time in a long time as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. So your new solo album, recently out, it's inspired by Maine, from what I understand. So I grew up in rural Pennsylvania, and it always has like a special place in my heart and like a almost indescribable feeling. So kind of talk to us maybe about what Maine means to you and being born there, and what kind of experiences went into making the album.
You know, I think that I definitely echo that sentiment where it's like it's kind of indescribable. Where you're from can be really powerful in a lot of different ways, and Maine is just it can be brutally elemental at some points. You know, the just the weather and the landscape and everything is it certainly isn't for the meek. So that kind of instills itself in all the people, which is something I really love. And I left to go to get my BFA and came back to Maine and just couldn't leave. And the record, a lot of the record is inspired by not just my favorite places in the state, but also the fact during the pandemic. I needed to change where I lived and found a house and bought a lot of property up here kind of in rural Maine. So I moved to the middle of nowhere on 17 acres and didn't look back. And like a lot of the record was inspired by that kind of switch and that kind of that new phase in my life where all of a sudden I had roots for the first time, but still was kind of doing this like transient lifestyle.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm kind of honestly envious of the land and by
Yeah.
yourself type thing. Like that's something I've, I long for eventually. So I lived in New York for a little bit, kind of ended up coming back to, where I grew up. And yeah, I think just that lifestyle of, kind of doing your own thing is super relatable to a lot of people. And, I think kind of echoes through the music at times for sure. So, you're no stranger to tour and the rigors of tour and what kind of goes into a tour. So what are you most looking forward to? You have a tour upcoming. What are you most looking forward to with this being a solo tour? And yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
I mean, I think I'm most looking forward to honestly, just playing these songs with the band. We've been having so much fun and just kind of showing this new music off to people. I think that, whenever somebody goes through a transition, I've seen this with friends and other bands and stuff. If the band goes away and someone else decides to pursue something else, or even if they're in the middle of a band and decide to pursue something else, I think that, it can be easy to miss kind of what you had, that, might have been easy at the point where you stopped. But it breeds this kind of hunger in it, which I love. Like one of my favorite things is getting in front of a crowd that like isn't necessarily there to see you and like trying to win them over. And like that kind of struggle really makes a show for me. I love it. I feed right into it. It makes me have a much better show when I have to like prove to somebody that like they spent their money, because we all live in a time where it's like it's hard to justify sometimes, $20 for a concert ticket or $30 for a concert ticket, and I want to make sure they know that like that they're going to have a good time that night, and like I'm doing everything I can to put on the best performance I possibly can. So it's kind of just bringing this new music and this new show and band to all of these places that I've been, 20 times before, 100 times before, and just kind of reproving myself, which I find super exciting.
Yeah, I think, yeah, there's some, I don't even know the word for it, but yeah, I love the idea of, winning over a crowd, right? Like, the people that come to see you and know you, there's something special about putting on a good show for them, 100%. But I think, yeah, just the thought of, making a new fan out of somebody or, really engaging with somebody who isn't super familiar is, um, yeah, such a good idea, honestly. So you're, kind of now running your own self in a way. How do you feel about all the aspects of being an artist where it's like, social media is this huge piece of everything now, right? Are you comfortable in that space? Is that something that you like find enjoyment out of, or it's like, man, it's necessary and I have to do it, but don't really find it to be fun?
Yeah, I've been making videos for a very long time in like for like different ways, and I've made a bunch of the ghost videos and do a lot of I pretty much do most of my own content. I've had a couple people help me film and stuff, but like the social media aspect of it, I can't stand. I really can't stand. I'm getting used to it, but like the Ghost is a great example of like a band that we could sell out a 7,000 person venue here in Portland, but we only had like 15,000 Instagram followers. Like we like actively avoided social media as much as we could.
Right.
And our fans weren't necessarily the social media crowd. So It's interesting to see the importance of it now, kind of how much the industry is putting on social media and what that means, and it's been interesting to kind of track to see how that translates in the longevity of a band and with musicians and what those metrics actually are. So I kind of dig into that and get really excited about it. But it's also the one nice thing I will say about having to be super present, especially as we're releasing a record, is that it does keep me working on something every day and keeps the ideas kind of flowing. Because it would be easy just to put out a record and be like, okay, yeah, great, did it. Now it's just time to go play shows. And now it's just like, oh, how do I keep people engaged? And I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Just like, especially like TikTok, how it works and what, people are looking for and all this stuff, it's pretty wild. And I think I'm pretty bad at it, but I'm trying for sure.
Yeah.
It's just,
it is funny. Like, I don't think anybody has TikTok figured out in the sense of how it works. It feels like a lot of luck associated with it. And it's curious, like, you guys, like, the Ghost probably came up when, social media was probably really only just starting, and it wasn't, you had developed this base of fans before it was necessary, right?
Yeah.
So,
Facebook. It was Facebook. It was like
right.
we no longer had to flyer for shows. We had to create Facebook events, and people actually would respond and like act on what they did on Facebook, which is kind of a wild thing to say these days. But like, yeah, it was Facebook and Instagram. So it certainly wasn't. Virality was like a thing that was reserved for, Gangnam Style and like video, whatever, like those one hit crazy wonders, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, with social media, it kind of feels like, at least to me, in the past 2 years or so in particular, like there's this, because of social media, there's this resurgence of Americana and folk music. And, what outside of social media, what do you think maybe plays into that resurgence?
Yeah, I think it not only does it feel this way, but I honestly, when I think of Americana artists, I would be hard pressed to find somebody I would say wasn't honest, like the music feels really honest and really sincere and genuine. And I think that's kind of the biggest draw, because like, as we talk about social media and stuff, and we talk about this like living in a culture of constant kind of presentation of who you are or who you'd like to be, I think that when an audience hears music that does feel genuine, I think that becomes a really important selling point, or a really important attractor, actually, not a selling point, to bring people into the music that other forms of music today might not necessarily have, It's the hearty meal instead of the candy, right? Instead of thinking about music. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, like folk in Americana, like having this, I don't know, this, space to, like you said, present that honesty is something that I don't know if was available in the past. I think people just associated folk music with, people playing on a banjo, like, backwoods type stuff, but it wasn't, that relatable experience wasn't brought to the forefront and just for such a wide audience until social media, until like the ability to go viral. And I'm interested kind of, what are your, fellow Maine native, Noah Kahn? I feel like he's kind of really put that, indie folk space back on the map, and it really, really allowed it to, to kind of grow a little bit in my eyes.
Yep. Yeah, I think that he's right now is the champion for New England, which is a great thing to have. I think before that, New England's had some great bands, and we're not necessarily known up here for music, which is wild to me, because I know so many incredibly talented bands and musicians that have come out of especially northern New England, Vermont and Maine. So it's nice to have a champion, and I think that right before him would be Grace Potter and Lake Street Dive, and you kind of have these interesting, and all of those have aspects, I think, of Americana. Because when I think of Americana, I think right now it's in a pretty folky period. But, I think that the first ever Americana band was The Band, that setup of instruments and what that sounded like, and songs that told stories for sure, and harmony. And I think if you look at the roots of it too, there are a lot of bands from New England that fit that mold, even though, none of the dudes from The Band were from anywhere near New England. I mean, Canada, but yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's funny that you say that. Like, I don't think people understand, like, especially for me, like something I learned recently, I mean, kind of unrelated to the, folk Americana space a little bit. There's like jam bands are a very Northeast thing, and I don't think I've like fully grasped that. But
Mm-hmm.
the more I think about it, like it feels so true to the type of people that like live in the Northeast and like exist in the Northeast and why that would be such a popular thing. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a random like thought that, jam bands really exist in the Northeast and come from the Northeast.
One in two people, you grab two people off the street, and one of them will never have heard of Fish, and the other one will tell you about the time they had the Great Went. Like that's like
Right.
it's like how
Yeah.
it is up here,
Yeah.
which is really funny. Yeah.
So kind of like going back to when you're on tour, maybe just in general, when it comes to like, on my page, I like to talk a lot about my mental health space and try to be as transparent a human being as possible. Because like you said, social media can get very diluted in the person you're presenting. What's kind of like your go-to when it comes to taking care of that space and recharging your battery, so to speak?
Oh, for sure, and especially on tour. Tour can be kind of brutal for it, and for me, honestly, and I learned this lesson a little too late, I think, but it was kind of taking time for being okay with taking time for myself on tour. Not just kind of being with Ghost. We were so close. I mean, Max, Sean, and I had been friends since we were two, so we were constantly together even before we started a band, and then we were in a van together all the time. So there was always a proclivity to just be with each other all hours of the day. And I think that's taking some time to go explore something. I love traveling and I love seeing the country. So any chance I can go to a national park or just take a walk outdoors, I take it. The being outside and being in the wilderness is really important for me, especially if it's on my own. I think it's where I think the best and where I relax the best. So taking that time, and then also, just kind of reading and trying to write. And I can't say that at headphone time in the back of the van isn't super important too, because like I'm a chronic listener of an entire record. Like I have a hard time listening to just playlists. So I usually will just throw in a record and listen for 40 minutes and then kind of come back out of it. But like that listening time, you can focus on listening. I find it really relaxes me, at least.
Yeah, I think like the listening to a record thing, I feel like in today's time has kind of gotten lost a little bit.
Yeah.
And even for myself, like I think I lost it kind of when I had first started doing this. I had like, I was sharing just singles, and then man, it just became like this, like almost like a hunt for the next single. And like I definitely lost my, space to just listen into a full album. And, we've been really trying to like consciously get back to that, because there is like a certain relaxation that comes with like throwing on an album and just kind of zoning out a little bit and just, but yeah, it feels like it's been lost where everybody kind of is, single, single, single into an
Yep.
album. But by that point, the single's been so played, does
Yeah.
anybody really listen to the album?
Exactly. And yeah, I come from the opposite school where like I would much rather create a body of work, that's 40 minutes long for people to listen to instead of just a 3-minute song. But and we both have records on the wall behind us, and it's like I think that I always encourage people to get into vinyl, not just from like you could always make the argument like the audiophile argument and that kind of stuff, but like my favorite thing about listening to records like an LP is that it's an activity that you like do have to pay attention to. So you carefully place it on the mat, you press play, and then you get through half the record, and then you have to get up and you have to flip it over and sit back down. You can't just like mindlessly throw on Spotify and like let it play music in the background. It demands your attention, which I think is really important to give
Yeah.
music that space,
Yeah.
especially these days because it happens so infrequently now. But yeah, I think that if that's the reason I try to push people towards vinyl all the time, because it's just like, you like then you can get records and you can spend time with a record. And that's what then you
Right.
start pawing over the album art and stuff. And I always geek out over that and look at the credits and stuff. So
Yeah. Yeah. The vinyl for me has been like a fairly recent rediscovery. Like I had a few, I mean, a while back, and then, they kind of sat and finally got like a good record player. And yeah, just the ability to put it on, sit with it, pay attention to it. Yeah. And like, I'm a sucker for the album artwork as well. Like, I mean, I have, I Love You, Honey Bear by Father John Misty behind me. Like, such a good album cover. Like, I love how it looks. And yeah, it really kind of connects you to the music a little more. And that's kind of what I've been loving recently about it.
And talk about a record that demands the context of the rest of the record for each song, right? It's like all those songs are incredible and you can listen to them on their own, but when you listen to them listen to that record start to finish, it's like a much as all of Tillman's records are like it's such a much more vibrant picture for you when you experience all of the music at one time.
Yeah, 100%. And like, not that I don't think artists do this in general, but I feel like he does a very good job of, like you said, kind of stitching together this picture throughout the entirety of the album. Whereas if you listen to, just one song, you get a little bit of it, but you're missing a lot of other context.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's one of the cleverest writers that is certainly alive right now, if not ever. He just is. I love him. Just absolutely love those records.
Yeah, me too. So do you feel, kind of back to the mental health talk, do you feel like there's enough resources available for artists when it comes to kind of taking care of that, their mental health? Is there enough resources out there for everybody?
I think, with the start and kind of expansion of backline care, that was a really good step. I think that it's starting to see, as someone who's like struggled with that myself for a very, very long time and been also very open about it. I've written a lot of songs about kind of my struggle with mental health and with depression and anxiety and how that fuels substance abuse and all that kind of stuff. Like I've written a lot about that, and I've always tried to be pretty open about it because that's what helped me kind of cross that threshold into having a working relationship with it. You never get past it. It always is going to live with you. That's kind of that's the thing that I think that people who haven't addressed it don't quite understand, is that like, you're never getting over it, but like you can live with it. And you learn the tools to live a healthy life and understand it a little bit better. And I think that Backline is doing some incredible work with helping musicians with mental health stuff. And now that with online therapy and more accessibility to therapy in general, I think we're living in an age where it's easier to get that help. And an industry as a whole, I still think that like sometimes it's easy to hang on to old bad habits and reinforce, kind of especially images of what a musician is and like how detrimental that lifestyle can be to your own health, to what you're doing every day. Because that's the other thing is, and I always used to describe it to people, like, because when we would tour was this idea that like when you come out to a show, like it might be the one night you go out that week. So you're really looking to party. And then, but what you forget is that, we've had that night the last 7 nights in a row, and we're about to have the 8th one the day afterwards. And it's a little bit different experience for the musician on stage, but there's still most musicians I know who love to perform live. Like there still is an innate desire to please people and to help fulfill that role for them. So they have a great night, and that can be really difficult. So I think that's, there are resources out there. If people are struggling, like it's easier to find resources these days and certainly pay attention to them. And also know that it's okay to take moments for yourself in this increasingly like constantly videotaped and streamed lifestyle that we all have. Like it's okay to take a breath, and like it's, and if everybody starts to realize that, then we all can start doing that,
Yeah. I think, man, there's so many things you said there that I would love to echo, in the sense of like, like take care, like just the last thing you said, like take a break every now and again. It's okay. Like take a break from your screen. Try to, like, I've been actively trying to force myself away from it, especially in what I do now. Like it's so easy to get lost in staring at it every day for an extended period of time. And, just like, the ability for us to even have this conversation, I think, kind of gives people, if they're listening, that ability to, man, if you talk about it with somebody else, or even just hearing other people talk about it, gives you that ability to maybe want to try to take care of it. Because, for the longest time, I was in that boat. I pushed it down, shoved it away, went around it, anything I could do to avoid it.
Yeah.
Culminating in a very, very bad spot for me, honestly. But after kind of, like you said, dealing with it, it doesn't go away, but it just gets easier. You're better equipped to deal with it. And I think that's all anybody could ask for in this life. Like it's hard enough the way it is. You can't beat yourself up about, you beat yourself up in your head about what's going on, at least.
Yeah, that's the easy way. It's the worst way to do it. It's also the easiest way to do it, right? Is to like, just to beat yourself up about it, or to act negatively or negligently about, those feelings, because it doesn't make them any less real, that's for sure. And usually just reinforces them.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes them worse. And kind of go into what you said, dude. I'm always amazed at like the run that like these like early 80s, like late 80s bands had, and like the amount of just like substance use they had gone through day in and day out. Man, I am just like, I think about it and I'm just like, it's such a amazing feat, but it's still very scary. It just
Yeah.
like blows my mind.
Well, and I think it's like it's a lot easier when you don't stop running, right? When you just like, if you're partying that way, you could last for a lot longer than most people were, because you're not taking a single day off. But as soon as you take that day off, like that's when it hits you like a ton of bricks, right? And you look at a lot of those guys now, it's like they're paying the cost for 15 years of constantly partying.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I mean, what a 15-year run, but man, yeah, you're right. They, look a little worse for wear, to say the least. So I'm kind of curious. So maybe it's a solo song, maybe it's a Ghost song. What's like the song you're most proud of? Not necessarily the most popular song, but man, just one you've put out and you're just like, I love it.
It is a Ghost song. It would be Ghostland. It would be that one. I wrote that song. I wrote that song when I was 19, well before the Ghost was started. When I was just starting to write things on guitar, and it was the first tune that the boys that Max and Sean learned with me when we started Ghost of Paul Revere, and it was the first tune that I'd ever written where I was able to step back, which is very difficult for me. I was able to step back and be like, oh, this is a good song. Like this has something in it, and I don't know what, and that's partially the reason why I love songwriting, is because there is some intangible mystery about what makes something good, right? You can't. It's hard to mathematically break it down to be like, oh, it's because this is the syllable structure, this is the rhythm, this whatever it is. That never really paints the whole picture. So it was the first time I'd written a song that I was proud of, and that song went on to kind of start, and it went on to be the namesake for our festival, and informed so much stuff in my life. And I just like it. I wrote it sitting next to a lake on a rainy afternoon when I was 19, and just kind of, for the first time was really honest with what I was writing about, because it's, when you're in high school, it's hard to actually get past your own wall of bullshit and write honestly, And it was about, it was about feeling sad and lonely, and that was so that song is one I'm probably the most proud of everything. And I've been proud of so many other songs since then, but that one is kind of a benchmark for me, because it was led me down this path to still be playing music now, almost 20 years later, which is wild.
Right.
So
yeah. So it kind of, how do you think your songwriting has evolved, right? So you started writing in your teens, how has that evolved or matured since that point to where you are now?
Well, I started to learn and understand music, right? Because I never really did. I kind of just started running with it and really enjoyed it. So I started to understand how a song kind of works, and learned. I always think that, like, I don't think to be a good songwriter you have to be musically inclined or have a really deep musical education. In fact, sometimes I think that gets in the way of writing a good song. But what it does is just like any language, music is a language, and just like any language, the more vocabulary the more succinctly you can kind of speak your mind and say exactly what you want to say. So as the years went on, I started to kind of learn that, and that really helped inform songs. And then it became really about trying to distill my thoughts as, the most efficiently as possible. Because at the end of the day, especially being a lyricist, it's more about like the efficiency of words you're doing instead of like anything else. Like you want to be able to say these, you want to express these like grand ideas and topics, but you want to do it in the most cohesive and smallest like length possible. And kind of learning how to do that was a trick that I started to learn and really started to push. And so, 5.5-minute songs, I was able to start saying all of the sentiment in 3 minutes, and that was kind of weird. And it also like allowed me to explore stuff. But the other thing is not trying to, I felt like I had a small period of writing where I was trying to write as if I was a good songwriter, And I think I lost a lot of the charm that I had in my earlier songs, where I didn't really know what I was doing. And finding my way back there, I think, was really important, to be like, it doesn't really matter. I don't need to do intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, chorus, bridge, whatever the structure you want to do, like whatever the standard song structure is. That isn't necessary. A song like the Ghost song, like San Antone, is essentially a circle. It starts, the intro is the same as the ending, and it loops back in on itself, and that's all it is. It's a song in 3 parts. There's a beginning, a middle, and then the beginning again. And that, like, knowing how many people loved that song, like, that's great fuel for the fire to be like, oh, it doesn't, like, I don't need these things that everybody tells me you need in a song. Like, people are gonna, if you do it correctly, people are gonna attach themselves to whatever. But honestly, it's about just like being more comfortable keeping that honest voice in the lyrics, and then not being afraid to kind of write the way I want to write. I don't think I would ever have a chance if I tried to write, it top 40 style or like modern country style or like whatever it is, because it's not my voice. And I've never really been afraid of just being like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to write what I feel, how I feel it. And I'm not going to worry about the convention of it like whether or not that's in style or not,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, at least for me as like a listener, I think the honesty, or what feels like honesty in a voice, is like what matters the most to me. Right. Like, kind of like you said too, that structure part, like I've never, as like just a listener, I've sat down and be like, oh man, here's the intro, the chorus, where's the next, I've never thought about that. It's just, how the song sits with me, resonates with me, and, how honest at the end of the day it does kind of feel. But yeah, so
yeah.
What about a song or an artist maybe that you think is kind of under the radar that everybody should kind of know?
Man, there's a lot. I mean, I would like to think they're super popular, but I have a Dr. Dog hat on right now. They would be one of my top. Dr. Dog and Deer Tick, talking about New England bands, Deer Tick has always been one of my favorite bands. And as far as songwriting goes, they're pretty top notch, and they're still putting out music, which is awesome. And Dr. Dog just got back together. They kind of ended the same time Ghost did. But it's nice. That new record I was really digging into, that's for sure.
Nice.
And I'm really, to get like on a really, really small scale, I have 2 of my really good friends, Ben Cosgrove, who was a member of the Ghost for a long time, and then my friend Max Garcia Conover, who I toured the country with. First tour Ghost ever did, used to call it our suicide tour, because we did 55 shows in 45 days. We just jumped in a van and and then we got back and still wanted to play shows, and that's how we knew that that was like 2014, I think, and 2015, and that's how we knew we could make a run at this thing. But Max Garcia Conover and Ben Cosgrove just re-recorded or just recorded some new music, and they have some music out on Spotify. And if people really love good songwriting and just exquisite piano playing, they should check both those artists out, because they're incredible friends and incredible songwriters, and they're both from here in Maine. So
amazing.
Ben's from Massachusetts, but we give him a pass. He lives here now, so we give him a pass.
Good enough. We'll take it.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of wrap it up here, man. Why don't you just talk to us about the album, talk to us about the tour, and just tell us what's up next.
Oh, I'm so happy the album is out in the world now. Finally, it felt like it takes forever when you're sitting on music for a year and you're waiting for it to come out. But I'm so proud of it. And it's just, Eddie and I recorded it down in Nashville with a bunch of just outstanding young musicians that are all doing really incredible things now. But we did it in about 4 days, and the process of the record was kind of unlike anything I've ever done, because I've never really worked with a producer like that, and certainly never one where I didn't have. I tend to be kind of a planner and keep my hands on things pretty aggressively. And I, for the first time, just took my hands totally off the wheel, and I was just like, I brought him 20 songs, and I didn't even know what songs we were going to record day of, and he kind of steered the ship and steered it in this incredible direction. I'm super proud of it, and I've done, I went to art school, so all of the design stuff and the album design and the merch and all this stuff is stuff I do myself. So I'm really happy with all that stuff. And I just finished the design. I had to go through and spell check it about 16 times because I always miss something. But if anybody has a good at losing everything vinyl, check the spine, because you'll also see when I missed on that one. But yeah, I just finished that design, so I'm really excited that all this stuff is kind of rolling, and I get to kind of rebuild my identity, post Ghost, and also incorporate a lot of themes, because a lot of that, and I don't feel like it's too terribly different from what I was doing in Ghost of Paul Revere. It's just just Max and Sean aren't singing on the records is really the biggest difference. And so I'm really proud to get it out in the world. And I'm really proud to show everybody this new band because they are just, they're hot as hell. It's great. We're just having the best time on stage, and we're playing everything a little bit faster and a little bit more rock and roll than it's on the record, but we're having a great time doing it. So I'm excited to kind of show the country this new music.
Awesome, man. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk with me. It's been fun.
Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hope you guys get the chance to check out Griffin William Sherry on tour, and please take a time and go listen to his new album. Appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you too, man.